Okay, so good morning again. Just wanted to touch base with you about today's lesson for the Southern Colonies and review with you the lesson for yesterday, which was the Middle Colonies. So let's just take a quick look at what we talked about and what you would have learned yesterday through doing the Middle Colonies lesson. So again, the Middle Colonies are the colonies of the 13 colonies, and these are the original colonies that were established here in the new land from Europe. And these are all we're going to sort of see is how England has taken over and they sort of become the ruling country over in this new world. So let's start with New York. So looking at the Middle Colonies, we'll start with New York. And I left a couple things blank in there, but I will go back and fill it out. So New York was originally explored by Verrazano. And a lot of you, I know a few of you did do Verrazano as a explorer in your project. So New York was explored by Verrazano in 1524 and Henry Hudson in the early 1600s, around 1609, and then Samuel Champlain. So the Dutch settled New York along the Hudson River in 1613. So, the Dutch sort of are making their way, they're colonizing, they're sort of having their successes and failures. And around 1630, the English colonists that have moved into Massachusetts and Rhode Island, New Hampshire, they start moving closer and closer to New York, what now is New York. But then we called it New Amsterdam, and that was what it was known as then, was New Amsterdam. And again, Amsterdam is in the Netherlands. It's a Dutch country, so that's why the Dutch named it New Amsterdam. But what happens in 1664 is the English sort of push. It's probably pretty violent. There's arguments and there's fighting. But in the end, the English win. And in 1664, the English claim New Amsterdam as their land. And they go back and say, listen, John Cabot, again, one of our explorers, and he's an English explorer. He was one of the first people. They sort of say he explored that area first, and so that's the reason why we're claiming it as English property, and so we're going to say that this is ours and you need to get out. The English are very powerful, and they make their claim and they state their claim, and they're successful with that. So the English become in charge of New York, and they obviously aren't going to keep it as New Amsterdam. So King Charles is the king at the time, and he grants this land. He gives a charter, which is a piece of paper that gives them permission to be there and farm the land and own the land in the king's name. And the king's brother is called the Duke of York. So York is a place in England, and they call it the Duke of York calls his new place New York. All right, just a couple of interesting facts. Peter Minuit buys Manhattan. So Peter Minuit is I believe he's a Swedish man, and he actually, take note of that name because he comes up in several other places. He really has a lot of influence in this time period. But he actually barters Manhattan Island, and he is able to get Manhattan Island from Native Americans for a value of about $24 in jewelry. And so the value of about $24, and he gets that whole island of Manhattan. At this point, the cost of Manhattan is pretty astronomical. You can't touch any property for anything reasonable anymore. So sort of a really good steal for $24 in value. But ultimately, we see that New York is officially founded in 1626 by the the king's brother, the Duke of York. So let's look at the next one of New Jersey. I'm just going to put this behind here. Sorry about the squeak here, but Bailey got a new ball, so she's going to be squeaking in the background. All right, so New Jersey. So New York and New Jersey are kind of go hand in hand. They have a very similar background in terms of how they are founded. So again, New Jersey, whoa, this is really hard to figure out the timing of the spacing in which direction here. So New Jersey, again, was explored and settled by the Dutch, just like New York, around 1613. And again, that same time frame, 1664, again, the British advance out the Dutch, and they claim the area again for themselves. So this is a few years after New York. They claimed it in 1626. So it took some time for them to kind of get over to the New Jersey area. So again, like New Amsterdam, they end up calling it. It's New Jersey is called New Netherlands, again a Dutch name, and they rename it when they take it over as New Jersey. Now King Charles, again, he had given this land to his brother. Again, he sort of said, "Here's the space, and when I gave him New York." Remember, Duke of York, but he ends up changing his mind. So I guess if you're king, you get a chance to do that. And he ends up changing his mind and says that, okay, the land between the Hudson River and the Delaware River, he's going to give it to his friends. And his friends are over here, George Carteret and Lord Berkeley of Stratton. So these two individuals, Sir George Carteret and Lord Berkeley of Stratton, they become the two individuals that are in charge of the area of what they renamed as New Jersey. And they see a large group of people come in, a large number of colonists and immigrants at the time. Again, remember, there's still people coming over on ships. People from other countries there are immigrating here, just like these original colonists did. That it isn't just people who were born or who have been in the areas or in other colonies. There are still people coming in from across the ocean who are still hearing of these new lands, and they're trying to come over and take advantage of what they're going to get their hands on. So these two leaders, actually, they grow their area, their colony, their territory by offering two unique things. And one is that freedom of religion and the representative government. So having somebody represent you in government rather than just having a king, somebody that speaks for you, someone from a people. So these are not, the freedom of religion is not the first colony to say this. New Jersey isn't. Remember, Rhode Island was Roger Williams was one of the first ones to do that. But certainly you can see it spreading. And, if this is something that is a relatively new idea, it's kind of taking hold, and the people are really feeling like that's something that they're drawn to. So we have two states, New Jersey and New York, that are part of the middle colonies. Oh, that's what you think of that, Bailey, huh? So then we have a third state in the middle colonies, and that's the state of Pennsylvania. So, Sorry, no, it's not the corona. Just some allergies. So Pennsylvania was originally claimed by Sweden. And there's that Peter Minuit name again that I pointed out to you. That by Sweden, by Peter Minuit, and he sort of establishes a Swedish colony of people there during that time. Sorry, Bailey's having an issue with her squeaky ball. So we look at, again, here's that name. And in 1638, he sort of establishes a colony there. It doesn't become very successful and doesn't grow as strong as the other colonies around that are growing around him. And what happens is the British end up driving out the Swedes and the Dutch. Because remember, the New Amsterdam and New Netherlands are in New York. It's in the same area, so to speak. And there's still some Dutch in that area. So in 1665, which is around the same time as what we're seeing for New Jersey, the British, King Charles is of Britain, drives those groups of individuals out and take over Pennsylvania. So now King Charles II has this large territory that he has a new claim to. And so the question is, what do you do when you have new land? Well, obviously, he needs... You do not bark at it. No, that's not what happened. That's a no thank you. All done. So, what do you do when you have a large debt? Number one, you need to, you acquire new land as a king. You need to make sure that there's no other country that's going to come and try to lay a claim to it. So you need to have people that are there going to represent you. Sorry, I'm not sure that these squeakers were a good idea. So she's toying with me now, friends. So the king actually owed Admiral Penn a lot of money. He was in debt to him as the king for services. I'm not sure whether for his job or what, if he had made a ship. I don't know. It doesn't give me enough information in my research. But he owed Admiral a lot of money, and the way that the king repays his debt to the admiral is to give him give his son William Penn a large grant of money. So a large grant of land. And so he issues one of the largest land grants ever, and that's to William Penn. And so in 1681, William Penn takes over this large piece of land in outside of New York. So what do you call this piece of land? Well, interestingly enough, Penn is the family name, and Sylvania is the Latin word for woodland. So it's Penn for the family name and the area of woodland. And obviously, one of the things we know is that this area hadn't been cleared out. It's still very rustic. It's still very wood nature-like. So there's a lot of woods in this area. So they come up with a very unique name of Pennsylvania. What's really interesting about the area of Pennsylvania, and you're going to see, if you look in time, this idea of Quakers, it becomes a really big religious impact. So what happens is, again, we're looking at this idea of religious freedom, and we know that the colonies in the North are very focused on the Puritans are focused on their religious beliefs, and we've seen that there's been a change from Rhode Island and then into New York and New Jersey. And again, it continues over into Pennsylvania. And William Penn really focuses on a particular group of religious people called the Quakers. And so this area becomes very heavy with the Quaker movement and the people who are focused on the Quaker religion. So if I'm looking at my checklist here, I'm saying that in 1681 is when Pennsylvania was established. It was established by William Penn, and it was established as a place for people to have religious freedom, and it was given to William Penn by the king as a repayment of debt to his father. And so it was his idea to allow some religious freedom there as he established that colony. So then we have the last but not least of the middle colonies, and we have Delaware. So Delaware has had a lot of explorers. Again, you did a lot of work with the explorers, and you saw that during this age of exploration, a lot of countries are sending explorers out to see what's there. And so they're all laying claim to different parts of it. But again, there's no records of things. And so it's kind of who's there and what colonies or what you've left there to have to say that this belongs to the French or this belongs to the Dutch. So, we see that in 1609, Delaware is explored by Henry Hudson. There's a gentleman by the name of Argyle who ends up naming or renaming what's now called the Delaware River. And again, that Peter Minuit, he was Swedish, is there, and he takes that space too. So in this whole exploration, Delaware is all part of it, and these explorers are sort of crossing over. There are no there's no borders. Borders are generally going to become natural landforms like rivers or mountains, things that are easily recognized as a border. So in 1682, William Penn says, listen, I need to be able to access the sea. They know that this sea is the ocean, and having access to ships to send things back to England is a huge source of revenue for them. So they are looking for an opportunity to have access to the ocean. And so what William Penn convinces the Duke of York to give him access. And he says, okay, so on the area on the western shore of the Delaware River, we're going to give that space to you. I'm going to lease that to you so that you have access to the ocean. And so here we have the beginning of Delaware. So you've got a lot of different things happening in this time, and you can see there are conflicting interests. And as we continue to look at how things are happening and what's going on during this time, why people are coming to the New World, that's changing. It's less and less gold, glory, and the exploration of God. It's a lot more of like individual religion freedoms. So if I'm looking at my chart here and I'm looking to fill in my paperwork, I'm going to say that in 1638, Peter Minuit is the beginning. The person who actually first explores and establishes the Delaware colony, and he is the actual founder of that Delaware colony. But I would also make note that the colony was also had a big impact by William Penn, and that Peter Minuit was one of the first governors of it. So looking at it, I'm just checking my notes, make sure I've told you all the things that I want to make sure that I give you information about. Trade is a big factor here. Again, trading of furs in this area and is important for both Minwi and for William Penn. So here's just a quick overview of what's going on in the middle colonies. I'm hoping this helps you either check your work or take some notes for getting this done from yesterday. That was yesterday's assignment. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'm sure Bailey will be helpful in answering them with her squeaky ball. Otherwise, if you give me a little bit more time, I will go ahead and I will put up here for you the Southern Colonies, which is due today on Thursday. Again, what I'm trying to get you to do is to look at the different regions. The Southern Colonies are really interesting. You're going to look at some things called Jamestown in Virginia. What you'll see is there's a lot of time that kind of passes in between that early 1600 time frame that we begin the northern colonies, and by the time we're getting to the end of the original 13 colonies. And so we want to just take a look at, again, that climate and the economy of all those things, of all those different areas and those different regions that we've been talking about. If you have, let me just type in, I'm typing, making sure I check all my notes here. So in the middle colonies, we're looking at, for the economy, we want to make sure that you are making note of the fact that there is more farms than there have been in the northern region. There's more land, but it's also a different kind of land. It's a little further away from the ocean, and so it allows for the soil to be a little more fertile for growing crops. So if I'm looking at the economy of the middle colonies, I'm going to say that the middle colonies have an economy that's based on some agricultural, so farms. So I'm going to say, I'm going to put you on pause for 1 second here as I get going. Okay, voila, the power of stop animation. All right, so economy. Looking at the middle colonies and their economy, we're looking at agriculture, and the farms. Agriculture means we're growing things. Farms are growing grains, oats, wheat, barley. Those kinds of grains are what we're looking for, and they grow well here. So we know also that there's some logging and textiles. So there's some creation of some materials and also logging of the trees that they're pulling off. Okay, so we also know that this area is heavily wooded. There's sort of untapped forests. So they are logging down those trees and using them for lumber to build new things. The interesting thing, too, is we start to see more cities pop up. Of course, these are not modern cities the way we have them now, but definitely more people have a bigger need. And so you're starting to see things like blacksmiths. They are the ones making metal, making sharp tools. Silversmiths, more of a fine craft for more silver objects that you would use in your home. Cobblers are people that make shoes. So you're starting to see more of what we call the trades. And then climate. So you're starting to see the climate, again, that is temperate. What does that mean? It means mild. It means that summers are warm, winters are cooler. Certainly in New York, Pennsylvania, they have snow and wind and colder winters. They're further away from the ocean, so they don't have so much of that. Ocean effect is what we call that. And then we also have, in terms of the geography, so what does it look like? What does the actual land look like? How is it formed? You'll look and you can see that You know, parts of New York and Delaware and New Jersey, there are definitely some coastline property there, but we also have some mountains. And you can see that New York, Pennsylvania is flat outside of there, and it's really good for growing crops. And so we start to see more of an abundance of crops being grown, those wheat, barleys, those grains, things like flour and other things can be made out of. So, we're really starting to see more civilized, less Native Americans, people living off the land, but more craftsmen coming in and making these cities more populated because there are more people and there's more needs. So that is a quick 25-minute overview of what's going on in around 1615 to 1670 and the establishment of the middle colonies in the 13 colonies. Stay tuned for the third session, which will be the video on the southern colonies.